Hey everybody, thanks for joining me tonight. We're going to do a little show, a little hangout for a while. For those who are interested, for those who are awake, to talk about, because it is nearly 11 o'clock, about some of the recent events, some crazy stuff going on, mainly in America. It kind of doesn't matter in a way because it kind of feels like we're all online these days. We're all part of the same culture war as America, Britain, Ireland, whatever. So it's much of a much in a certain way. As most of you know, Charlie Kirk, American conservative activist commentator, killed tonight. And I don't think I'm the only one who's sort of impacted by that a little bit. And I initially saw it. I also want to talk about other stuff, of course, but just on Charlie Kirk. The initial reaction is like you're jarred a bit by it because the nature of it's a brutal killing. It just is. We've all seen a lot of stuff online over the years, this and that, things, similar situations, but whatever, people see car crashes or whatever on Twitter or wherever, but there's just something especially jarring about that. He was shot speaking at one of his events, and basically he went from alive to dead instantly, as far as I can tell. Maybe not technically, biologically, literally, but for those who saw it, you'll know what I mean. Forgive me now, I haven't streamed in a while, so I just kind of wanted to go live to chat, but like this isn't like like the Late Late Show, you know what I mean? I haven't got my razzmatazz. And that's why I went live. I haven't been on much, but I just wanted to talk about this because I've so much going on recently. It feels kind of strange and hard to know how to even express it. And so here we are. But the nature of how he was killed, how he went from alive to dead instantly, that's just the nature of whatever type of rifle shot. I think it's believed it was like 70 feet away or maybe 100 feet. But it wasn't point blank. Some sort of sniper. I don't know how these things work. I'm not American. I don't use those. But I'm actually just relying on the chat here. I just kind of want to engage with you all a little bit. That's why I'm coming on. Annie W says, "How much more can we take? We need unity immediately." See, to me, there's so many points around this in a way, because it's like, who is we in a sense. I've seen a lot of commentators online since he was assassinated that the left are gone crazy and we need to all this kind of stuff, and it's like, well, like most of them like most people who are left wing or support carbon reduction or whatever it might be, I don't think are going around murdering people. And if you go on X or on one of these things, you'll see shock jock so-called lefties relishing in it, joking about it, whatever. That's online, that's the internet, but that's not indicative of like that many people. It's trying to keep context on it, and then the other thing is like me coming on like weeping or something like this, or acting like it might just seem a bit trite. I don't know him. I don't agree with his politics that much. So like, it's a lot of stuff happens in the world. So why be a little bit affected by it, more than anything else? Like I alluded to, it's because we're all in this kind of thing a little bit. And it's even if you weren't nominally right wing, like just this world, and it's different levels. I'm on here like a nano influence YouTuber niche person, tiny in Ireland, and he's this megastar in America or whatever. So very different ends of the spectrum, but a spectrum nonetheless. And even you, if you're anonymous watching, maybe you have an anon account, but so it's like another step back on the spectrum again. But still, regardless of where, we're all kind of on that spectrum. We're online. We're a lot of us, not all, but a lot of us are under the age of 40, kind of online oriented, into culture war, politics, all of that. And Charlie Kirk's another figure, you're a figure, anon, I'm a figure in my right, and Charlie Kirk is a figure. And we're all just kind of debating and discussing and joking and, being serious sometimes about the ideas. Of course, we're all serious about the ideas, but it's sort of like we're online and we're at events, we're at demonstrations, protests, we're talking. So in that sense, you relate to Charlie Kirk, even though I don't share that much of his political views, and he's a way big deal compared to someone like me. But still, I kind of identify more with Charlie Kirk in a sense than I do whoever presents the Late Late Show. It's a different world, it's a different age, it's a different medium. They don't understand all the nuances of all this online and kind of modern politics, let's call it, or like contemporary politics. He does, regardless of the differences. And so he's just, we're all like little characters in this world, and it's not just online. We go out and do stuff as well. But that whole line being crossed of like straight up brutal assassination, I don't want to get like gory about it. You've all I assume seen the video. He's speaking, he's answering a question, or asking a question to a question. He's engaging with an audience, person in the crowd, and he's just speaking casually. And within a second, he's, his arms he turns into a biological reaction, adrenaline, whatever that thing is when your hands curling. It's brutal. It's like an animal. And to see that happen to someone and their life is over instantly, because of, why? You have theories about maybe Israel did it because he was turning on Israel and all the, I don't really know. The default assumption is it's like a left-wing liberal person, and I suppose that's the most likely. But just either way, he ends up where he is, and you're just thinking, he's got a family with young kids. He's got like a 1 and a 2-year-old, I believe. And at the end of the day, people like left wingers think he's a fascist, and right wingers, like, the kind of online right or whatever, think he's accused him of being conning and a shill for Israel and all of that. And you wonder, I wouldn't have been much of a fan. You think, how much of this is a brand? Like, if he has any opinion at all whatsoever on anything, is it real with these big figures, these institutional figures? If they change their opinion, is that just something that got handed down to them? They're just like a poster boy. Or is there a guy there who genuinely does have some agency over his own views? I don't know. But either way, like, the guy would, tuck his kids in at night, not to get sappy about it, right? But, he eats and he lives and he's a person. And he has his family, and he's just gone instantly, what was the kind of call to arms? I'm trying to think of the word, the casus belli. It's something like he said something I disagree with about this or that or the other, and he's a relatively moderate figure, objectively. He's accused from the right of being not right wing enough, and he's accused by the left, so-called, of being too right wing or whatever. So, like, by definition, a sort of a centrist, really, somewhere there. And he's dead for, and he's just does live streams and does events. That's just that on its own is just jarring. I don't sort of get afraid of being jumped up on myself. It's probably not so realistic, and even if it were, it's one of those things. and how do I put it? It's like there's a sense of, and again, I put this across the spectrum. Whether you're me, a nano-sized Irish figure on Twitter, right? Or whether you're an on, but like you kind of know some people or whatever, or whether you're this big figure, look, we all sense this heightening destiny a little bit. I don't know, I do anyway. That I don't see this kind of just going nowhere. I don't know how it's all going to play out. A lot of us feel powerless and a little bit lost, and like we're swept up in this thing a little bit. And the way things are going in the world, you know, on a mass scale, but also in our daily lives, what we see on the street, how our finances are, how our lives are, relationship, whatever, all, just the kind of fabric of our lives in society, and then kind of broader global events feel like kind of they're deteriorating a little bit. Maybe that's just me, but it feels like that, and it feels intolerable, and it feels like it's a whistling kettle a little bit, and it's just getting louder and louder. Maybe I'm crazy. And it's sort of real. It's not just you look too far into the abyss, you go on Twitter too much, you see too many videos or something. It's like, no, it is. You go out on the street as well. It's like that. You try to get a doctor. I don't bore you, but like, all of these things seem to be just kind of coming apart a little bit. The alienation is through the roof, the Travis Bickle vibe, where it's like, I don't recognize any of this. And it doesn't feel, not only does it not feel like it's getting better, but and not only does it feel like it might be getting worse, but it feels like it's getting worse in a general sense, just all the time at a fast rate. And probably, I don't know about exponential. I don't want to get back to my statistical definitions here, but whatever the term is for that, something approaching exponential, where the amount that it got worse in this 3-month period is greater than the amount it got worse in the previous 3-month period. It's escalating. That's what it feels like. And then that bleeds back into the culture war, the politics, this whole idea that we are all unsatisfied. We are all divided a little bit, a lot of us in different ways. And we don't know where it's going. It's kind of like, headbutting a wall or something. It's like, I don't quite know the destination, I keep talking about what I talk about here and there in different ways. And so do others. And we're all involved in this thing. And when I say all involved, it's not just Anon's online, some guy talking on YouTube. It's kind of like everyone. People are talking about it in secret, and people know, the normies know as well. They sense it and they know. There's nobody out there, unless you're like on the pig's back, you're on the right end of it, you're part of maybe like 6% of society. I don't know, especially under the age of 40. Most people sense it. And so it's like, I don't know where it's going. It's hard to phrase this. It feels like it's going nowhere, and yet it feels like it has to be going somewhere at the same time. So I don't know what the next move is. There's this underlying sense that people want revolution. They want revolution. They want it to happen, or enough to be enough, or whatever it is. And yet, none of us either know nor have the power to really engage in that kind of stuff. I'm not going to start like prescribing this or that or the other, but you get what I mean. Someone can talk big on Twitter on the Anon, but it's like they can say, we should do this or that. It's like, okay, well, like, I mean, I don't see you doing anything like, realistically, like that's talk, but we're all just sitting here. I condemn all illegal activity, etc. You know what I mean? I'm just speaking in general terms about the sentiment that's out there, right? So it's like you don't know where to apply or place this unease we have, and the intolerable levels of unease we have about how much wrong we know is being done. And yet we feel like something must happen. And certainly it's not just going to taper off and sort of gradually return to some previous form of normality. We know that's not happening, right? So there's this general sense of confusion and unease, and to me, sort of sadness, um, because it comes back to a yearning for me for harmony. I just want some normal world, and I've children, young children as well, even if you don't, whatever, just in general, you want the social fabric, the familial structures, people's mental well-being, their prosperity, their ability to feel comfortable and secure, their familiarity with society, the rites of passage from young to adolescent to young adult, and getting older, and the getting old in a graceful way that sort of is harmonious. You have your family around you, some sort of continuity, tradition, stability, order. And what it feels like now is a lot of evil and disorder, chaos, and ultimately at the butt end of all that is violence. Um, Violence, like ugly violence, not valiant, not chivalric, not some sort of duel, but just ugly violence. I mean, it's not so relevant, but like, if I don't know if you've seen Nepal, they're chimping out over there, like beating the shit out of their finance ministers or whatever. No comment, right? But then you have, I've been trying to get her. I'm not Ukrainian, you know what I mean? Iryna Zaruska, the Ukrainian girl who got stabbed in the train. That is, and I'll just kind of segue into that. This girl who is 23, I believe, she looks younger. She looks like a little girl. On the train. Again, I assume you've all seen that. But and you all know why that's troubling. Don't need to spell that out in a way, but I can't say anything new in a sense. I'll just say what I'm thinking is that she got stabbed, she got killed by this guy, etc. He's black, all the dynamics, all the rest of it, right? But it was the rest of the train, to me, was the troubling part. Not obviously the worst thing is that she got stabbed, clearly, but these things happen in the world. People that how do I put it? Like, it is a problem. It's getting worse, all of that. But like, we see these things happen in general. It's a big racial thing, but like, even intra-racially, you can see these things happen. People get killed. It's a big world. You will see these things to some extent, outlandish and horrific as it is. But what can't be explained by the insane violence of one man and the unfortunate victimhood of this one girl, what can't just be explained as that, one individual upon another, is the state of that train, right? And that's America, but I see notes of that in Ireland too. And the other thing too is that it is a massive, the racial question around that, obviously, right? I'm not going around denying that. But there's a bit of that across the board too, that sort of apathy and disconnection and almost like unreality among people. I've seen it, a very different scenario, but I used to get on a train with my wife and son, who was like barely 2 at the time. She was pregnant, late on, clearly pregnant. And we would get on a train from Dublin. We would just be up and down once in a while for something. And she would get on and people would just sit there, that's a much smaller thing. But I just thought, when I was a kid back in my day, that would have been unheard of. You had like gym bros, you had tech bros, you had all sorts of people sitting there looking into their phones, kind of pretending that they couldn't see. They obviously saw, some part of them saw, but it just didn't occur to them. They're so in their own world. And of course, this Ukrainian girl is sort of a similar vibe, of course, amplified by that racial antipathy, perhaps. And America is kind of worse, probably. But it's a multitude of factors together. You know what I mean? But regardless, the fact that she's stabbed out like that, and she just has to fall on the floor and just die, and people are like leaning away from her. I feel like if you were stabbed by one bad man and everyone rushed to you and rubbed her hair and told her it's going to be okay, something like that. I think she was a hopeless case, but she would think your last little moment would be people anyway. But the idea that, and I saw stills of it, that in her, just before she passes out, she looks to the guy who walks down the aisle to get out of Dodge, and then the woman sitting opposite her, she looks with her last actions basically are to look to him as he goes by, look him in the eye, and look at the woman across from her, to just say like, hello, like, help me, like, you know what I mean? And they just basically like look at her and just like go back to their phone or whatever and just kind of lean away. Someone says the internet has a lot to answer for. It is, and it's also the state. It's the state of the society, and that's sort of something I want to get to. I'm not glossing over the racial thing. The reason I'm not speaking to that and like getting on a soapbox and what I'm pontificating about that is just the reason I'm kind of skipping over that is because I think you all know that. I know that, you know that. We get it. I'm a few days late to the party, so-called. So I just want to, talk around that, talk about some maybe other aspects as well. The internet has a lot to answer for. I don't know, it does, sure, but what gets me is, and this is how like Charlie Kirk, whatever happened, like whoever did that, we don't know, but it is what it is. Someone did it, and it's brutal, and it's ugly, and it's a bad omen, right? Someone in a chat I was looking at earlier said this could be the Reichstag fire type of thing, or the Franz Ferdinand whatever, for an American Civil War. It might not happen tomorrow, but you could look back in time and say, look, things escalated over a certain period of time. This was certainly one of those big aspects of it. And I'm hesitant to say that because people love saying this or that is going to be the next Civil War. Like, maybe not. But, it's at that level. It's a very serious thing. And it's hard to get past it. Because if he's killed, who's next to go? Who is there going to be retribution or something, and cross-pollinating each way? And just where's that going? Like, what, like, and I go back to my original thing of like, we don't know where we're going, but we know we're going somewhere, type of thing. And we feel like we have no control over it. That's the best way I can put it, because it's a difficult sentiment I'm trying to express. It's a confusing, disorienting, and sort of scary, right? I'm not scared, quaking in my boots, but scary in a big sense. It's a scary reality we're in. And like I say, a harmonious time. The other thing is, I'd say a harmonious time is I feel that sense of yearning and also a sense of whiplash, because I was raised in the 90s and the early 2000s. Like, that's when I was in my first 10 years and a young teenager. Everything after that is kind of part of my second half of my life, my adult life, my conscious memory. But my foundation, my start, my first view of the world as like a child and a young teenager was the 90s, basically, in the early 2000s. And it was so simple. And there was that sense of like global liberalism and economic growth and whimsy and familiarity, especially in Ireland, because we hadn't had any of these changes kicked in yet. That little upbringing, and I didn't have some sort of wealthy or, like, what's the word? coddled upbringing or whatever. Like, I wasn't part of some Celtic Tiger thing or any of far, 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 far from it on a personal level. But just, it didn't matter what level you were at in society, just existing in that society alone at any rank, even the bottom rank, even being homeless on the street was great, in a sense, relatively. And the sense of hope, the sense of all of that, and the sense of inevitability that we were, I suppose, indoctrinated with, deluded with, the sense of inevitability, not to do the end of history thing, but kind of though, like history, the darkness, the conflict, all that stuff, the impoverishment, or, any of that stuff, like, poverty, deprivation, social dysfunction, abuse, war, all of that stuff. You have the Good Friday Agreement and all that's all lovely. That's all behind us now. So now we're just people who are, you can't help but be relatively affluent. And it's all good, and we're all modern, and we're all having a good time. That was my default view of the world. And then you have like 2008 rocks it a bit, and then it kind of limps on like, all right, enough, until like 2015, 16, we've all this migrant crisis stuff. It really is showing up in the country. A lot of these other things, the great awakening was like 2014 happens, so, and then there was a kind of a grim era after the 2008 recession for a while too, a little bit. And then that kind of limps on after 2016. We have this big culture war thing. And then you get COVID, and then you get out of COVID into this like rampant immigration, this chaotic political detachment, as Jonathan Bowden called it, de-democratization, this intense and deepened, like, even compared to 2018, post-COVID, there was this real sense of like, oh, we have no control at all. Like, we don't, we're in some sort of vague, invisible dictatorship, and it's awful. And it seems to despise us, right? Not just ethnically, but economically, socially, it seems to be doing kind of everything bad, like, and I don't know quite who it is, what it is. It just is. I know this is very depressing, sorry, but like, that's kind of what we're in, and I've been accused sometimes of being depressing when I talk, and it's like, sure, sorry about that. Maybe I should like add in a few jokes, right? But it's like, then I go out into the world and I see a lot of stuff that's going on, and I'm like, how, I think we have to be realistic about it. Like, I don't know, the good vibes thing is a little bit overrated these days. Or you're talking about that too much, or like, yeah, let's not talk about that. Talk about it a little bit, but it's like, well, no, like, people under 35 or 30 or whatever in Ireland are totally fucked across the West. Like, they're not going to have homes. They're going to be feudal serfs. Like, Lord knows how kind of much worse it's going to get as it unfolds from one decade to the other, and people get older. Like, I mean, to me, it just seems really bad. Like, and and Indians buying up 80% of estates and all these chaotic things. We're just like, why would that be happening? Like, I mean, why would even exploitative, incompetent, somewhat corrupt government? Yeah, but why would they do that though? I just can't even fathom it, when you have that sense, it's like, I don't know, to me, I'm like, I think Manchester United and the weather, and you can wait. I think when people say we shouldn't be too serious about it and we shouldn't talk about it too much, it's like, I think, given the way things are, I think we shouldn't talk about anything else. That's seen as a schizo, obsessive, weird thing. But I'm like going, well, no, if I were in a boat and there was water pissing up through holes in the bottom of it, I'd be doing nothing but talking about that. In fact, I would just stop and say, can we agree that we must talk about this, right? It's very important, actually, that we talk. Not only should we not talk too much about it, we should not be talking about anything else almost, which sounds a bit intense, but it's like, wouldn't that be better though? If everyone in the country was just just talking about this, like housing, the state of the economy, the state of our energy sector, blah blah blah, like the overall bulk of it all. Would that not be better if everyone was like, "Yeah, it's really fucking bad, and I don't like it. You don't like it either. Great. What do we do? Like, let's get together." Um, but anyway, that's a bit of a tangent, right? I just said I'm being too depressing, and then I went on and did more of it. You know, with these killings, it's like, uh, I think the two of these, even though they're American, we're all kind of in the same boat with each other. The other thing too is that if you want to be like Irish about it, oh, we're in Ireland, what's that? You have your Aisling Murphys, you have your Parnell Street. Those aren't like, people have been killed in Ireland before over the years. Domestic issues, this, that, and the other, feud. But the idea of a bunch of kids getting killed outside of school in the middle of the day by some mystery migrant man, that's not normal. Who are these people? Who is Mohammed Marai in Dundalk, who stabbed the Japanese guy? What happened to him? He went crazy, and now he just disappeared. What's going on with this guard stabber from wherever it was? The one that I think was maybe a false flag. That's another story. But like, what happened to him? What's kind of going on? A lot of these political ops that are going on, you don't know. A lot of it is, funny as well. Like, we started with NGOs. NGOs control the left. They're paid. The left are bought up by NGOs. Antifa are paid by the state. They are a controlled version of a political faction. And of course, on the right, you have elements of that too, all over the place. Anyone legit and with a brain in their head who is broadly right wing knows that. I don't want to name names or kind of entities, but like, there's a lot of entities within the right wing. Like, you have to clamber through about 10 layers of shit to get to anything kind of real. So even that, like, there's so much of that control. I don't want to get conspiracy, but we do find ourselves a little bit lost. It's like, okay, factions, things that are kind of fake, the amount of political attention that's given to things, your Palantirs and your thises and your that's. People feel a little bit lost in like, what's going on? Where's the political party that I sign up to? Like, there's 50 of them, half of them are bullshit. So we have that sense of powerlessness. Yet something must happen. Like, it can't just go on like this forever. And then back to the violence again. Like, we're a little bit scared as well. If you think about, I was thinking about Dublin lately, and how I wouldn't. Did any of you see Donald Clark's article? Right, he said he was talking about the exotic excitement in Lidl on Talbot Street, but on Dublin, it's like, you get in there, and I'm not skittish about the street. Let's say, put it that way. But I mean, the moment I would get into the train station or somewhere in Dublin, my head's looking around. I would be like that in there. And I was thinking about how the nice part of Dublin, like as per Donald Clark's article about Dublin being great, realistically in the inner city, north or south, I think the only place where there can be an affable street time had by natives, where they're not worried and they're letting the hair down, having a drink and relaxing, and everyone's good looking and it's all good and happy days, is like Fade Street and Drury Street over there, kind of this area that you could walk up and down in about 3 minutes, right? If you go there, you'll see throngs of Irish hipsters and that having a good time. But outside of that, as far as I can tell, for the most part, it's just Gotham City. No, I really am just rambling and complaining about stuff. How does that lead back to Charlie Kirk? Well, I don't know. But it kind of does, you have the Ukrainian girl gets stabbed. Charlie Kirk is the mainstream figure talking about it. Then he gets his neck blown out of him, killed. Donald Trump is a Israeli asset, right? That's not really doing anything. They're trying to do the same with Europe. You have all this kind of flag stuff going on. That's another question. There's a lot to talk about, but like, you know, is it just like an escalation of violence and kind of death and killing? I don't know. Without end. I don't know. I think there'll be reprisals, probably. And I think America is full of guns, and I don't know how it leads to some sort of movie version of a civil war, but I can see it getting very bad. Yeah, people are going to see the Ukrainian girl get killed. There will be someone out there who's a bit unstable, had too much, all that kind of stuff. I condemn all that. But at the end of the day, people are going to pop off. They just are on like every side against each other. And that just adds to the fun in a sense of everyone's poor, everyone's alienated, and now on top of that, you have like years of lead type violence to boot. So that's the fun we have for us. I think of China as well, right? One last thing. Like China is, I'm an admirer of the Chinese state and socio-political, socio-economic order and all that in general. It's not perfect. But to me, it's like the closest thing to a normal country in the world. You have your Gulf states are pretty nice, well run. And some other places, Malaysia's all right. Indonesia is its own thing. You know, Japan, South Korea and all that. But China is like the big kahuna, right? Like a proper civilizational state and people who have it really, really going on. And yet, you know, their demographics are declining rapidly and they're just holding their shit together. Their government isn't like nominally has some democratic sort of system in a way, like little prefectures and areas get to vote for what they want and say what they want. But obviously it's a dictatorship. It is a dictatorship of a sort of a party, but so is the West. Everywhere is basically, right? And yet, despite no individual Chinese person having power over the government, they basically get what they want in a sense, right? They might have money issues or this or that or whatever, complain about doctors or whatever. But like in China, Chinese people are not getting like shat on constantly by their government in the most offensive and degrading ways possible, right? They're not having their country torn to shreds in front of them. They have a normal country. As far as we can see, the government in China, whether it comes to infrastructure, migration, social issues, this, that, or the other, they're sort of trying to make the place better, and they're trying to make the individual life of a Chinese person kind of better. I'm sure there's more to it than that, but broadly speaking, that's the case. You're kind of going, why would any place not do that? Yeah, I could understand a place like the Congo being poorly ran because it's just incompetent or whatever. They can't get their stuff together. Poorly ran is one thing, but what we have is just something so different. It's like, you know, what do we even describe this as? Like, you know, what do you do about that? You're kind of just saying to your government, could you just be like China? You know what I mean? Just like, okay, you're a dictatorship as is. Okay, be a dictatorship. We've no control or whatever. Could you just stop? You don't even have to be amazing. You don't have to build all the stuff China builds. Build some of it. It's almost like in China, the bar is that things have to keep getting better, right? And which is not a high bar because technology always evolves, material abundance, AI, these things, you know, we went from internet to, you know, AI and all. Like you expect over time there's some added value and that you could try to figure out solutions and just gradually make things just that a little bit better. You know, in the West, we're at the point of like humiliation now where if we could draw a line in the sand with our regimes, as fucked up as our countries are, I'm sure most of us would take this deal. Like, let me know if you would, because I might. He said, how about you just stop making it worse from here on in? Doesn't have to get one bit better. You just won't make it worse. And if it does get worse, it can be some external circumstance or whatever, but you won't actually go energetically, fanatically out of your way to burn it to the ground in front of us and laugh at us and humiliate us as you do it. Could you try not to do that? Like, why would that be so hard? You can still make money. You can still take some brown envelopes and stuff. You can be a bit incompetent, but like you're doing a really good job of destroying the gaff and making it as incoherent as you possibly can. I just don't get that, And people say it's a Jewish thing or it's finance capital, some maybe some combination of that at a surface level. But like, it's like, could you not just kind of do a lot of those things and still have it be all right, or the rate of decline be a bit slower? I don't. Why do you have to go so out of your way? Like, I just think of a normie who's Sinead and John or whatever, and they're trying to buy a house within 30 miles of Cork or Dublin or Galway. Reasonable enough. And they're happy with it. It's 3-bed, reasonably good nick, and they'll buy the house and then they'll have a little baby and another one, and they'll get a dog and they'll watch telly. And that's it, right? It's not a whole lot to ask for. They're both working. They both are civic people. If they found a wallet on the floor, they would leave the money in it and they would go out of their way to return it, because that's just the way they were raised. They're decent, normal people. They're going, that's all I want, right? And then they find, oh, it's a new build housing estate. Great, I have a chance. But they realize then that, oh, fuck, we only have like a 10% chance because we budgeted for a deposit and the rest of it, we said we'd do a 3-year plan. And in that 3 years, the price went up like 50 grand. So now it'd be a miracle if we got it, but we'll try. You show up to that estate and 80% of the people there are Indian queuing up for it, right? They've all got like 4-person mortgages and deals, and they're running, they seem to have money to burn on it. Like, Sinead and John might be going, I didn't wake up out of my bed trying to have a problem with Indians. I don't mind if there's some Indian guy here or there, that's one thing. But just why the fuck on earth is this happening? Like, this didn't happen by accident. Some Indian didn't wake up out of bed and randomly decide to go to Ireland. Obviously, the government is doing it. Last True Gale was in the chat a while ago. He did a big stream on it, very good. 4-person mortgages, basically melting down the fucking economy and selling it off for parts is what they're doing. Basically getting more value out of houses, and that's the whole thing. But like, do you have to do that? Like, do you not make enough money off just mortgages? Mortgages are notoriously, difficult for the person paying it, right? There's definitely money made off those, right? Is that not enough? I mean, what's the extent of it? What sort of fucking, like, where back to the original point, where does it go? Like, like, in terms of the regime, if like Mr. Regime were in front of me, I'd be like, okay, you're the finance capitalist, the Gombean Irishman, the Jewish, whatever people have, right? Different theories and intermingling theories. Just, I'm speaking to Mr. Regime and I say, like at what point would it be enough for you? Do you want it to be like Blade Runner, where you're the one guy and it's this big techno-feudal empire or whatever, robots, or like, would you be happy just being very rich? What's the end goal? Like, I mean, what would make you happy? Can we strike a deal? What's fair? But we don't know. We just don't know. We don't really know what the issue is, really. And I study these things, I'm sure a lot of you do as well. I'll just be humble and honest and say, I can't really know. I don't know what it's like, can we just arrive at a China point in some way? I don't believe we're going to have a ethno state, right? Like, you know what I mean? It's just, there's so many foreigners here. You could reverse immigration, remigration, all that stuff. But like, you're not getting to some romantic nationalist ethno state. Even like nationalism, it's essential and it's natural, but it's like, I don't know what it's kind of like, what would I want basically is like, yes, a reasonable form of nationalism, yes, some remigration, quite a bit of it, ideally. And we all want great things, but like, I think I'd be happy for just as well, or like a democratic, like a nice democracy where all the parties jostle and debate and we all have good faith ideas and parties get voted in. Like, that would all be nice. The nationalism would be nice, like good, amounts of remigration, reassert our language, our identity, all that kind of stuff. Of course, even like socialism. I'm not like anti-socialist. So like reigning in capitalism and all that stuff would be good, but like ultimately it's just coming back to like, I'd just like to be safe in the knowledge that whoever is dictating basically every aspect of our lives and how it operates, whether that is the Global Council of Elders or the Irish government, Rialtas na hÉireann, or whether it's the EU or the Northern Hemisphere Trust or whatever, just like whatever the ruler or the sovereign government is that I'm under, whatever I am and whatever it is, could it just not hate me? Could it not be trying to destroy every aspect of coherent and harmonious society and function around me? Like, would that be so hard? Anyway, there was that demographic thing, Pascal Donoghue talking about this. I mean, I'll just play this quickly. I know I'm just kind of rambling. I get it. I know, but I'll go for another while. This is just part of it. This is like just to the point. I think I kind of fluffed on the old Charlie Kirk and the Ukrainian girl. It's just because I've seen like, there's like Nick Fuentes and there's all these characters who do excellent shows and they talk about, I'm looking at myself here on X, I don't want to see that. But who do very good takes on it or whatever. So I don't know. I just kind of wanted to like think out loud a bit or whatever, just kind of talk about it. But no major hot take really. In a sense. To me, it's just share my screen. Yeah, someone here says, I can't believe they killed Charlie. And then there's the left-right thing. I was in another chat earlier, right? Not to chat, like, expose. But people were talking about how left-wing, like the left-wing, like the far left or Antifa or whatever they are, how we forget because they've died off a bit in the last few years, how like evil they were back in the day. And I don't mean like the left are evil, the Dems are evil, the Green Party's evil. I don't mean like this broad, like half the population or all liberal college students or whatever. I'm talking about the real like dirtbag far left sort of group. I'm gonna get comfortable here, but how evil they were. Like someone reminded me that if you think to back in the day, I've been at many demos and stuff and been across from them. They would like if they could kill you, they would, and it just was reminiscent of this Charlie Kirk thing, if they could kill you, they kind of would. And I'm going, you don't even know what I believe. Like you're trying to say that I want to get right. You're saying that I want to gather up 6 million people and put them in so and so, right? And all this sort of stuff, right? And you're just kind of going, and they're looking at you as if like that's your secret plan or something, whatever. And you're just thinking, how like demented is this? Like, you're kind of thinking, I had like hash browns for breakfast. I, tripped over my fucking chair on the way out the door or whatever, like I'm normal. I'm a person. I just, whatever. It's just like, I just live my life. I would kill a fly maybe, but I don't hunt. I'm normal. I scroll my phone. I wouldn't rob anyone. I wouldn't punch someone or whatever on the street. Like I wouldn't do any of that. Like I'm certainly not looking to go out and secretly kill millions of people. It's just like it fails the smell test. It's like you really think that that's my goal, and you think I have power just because I'm talking on Twitter and I'm at a demo or whatever saying reduce immigration. You think that underneath it all, I secretly want to go and slaughter millions of people, and I know that's what I want to do, and it's like a demonic secret thing that I'm like all the other stuff I'm talking about is a cover for my real desire, which is just the killing millions of people thing, innocent people. You're just kind of going, I don't know what to say to a person who sort of believes that. I don't know, like, it's kind of scary. Like, you think that that's where I'm at, even though I'm happy to talk to you, and tell you. And if you ask me, I'll say, indeed, I do not want to do that. There's no reason for you to believe that, besides indoctrination or some sort of weird thing you have going on. But based on all that, some sort of like foaming at the mouth situation. It's like if they had the opportunity, they would kill you. And they talk about it: punch a Nazi, kill a Nazi. And then you kind of go, well, what's a Nazi like? And they go, you're a Nazi. And you go, oh, am I? Okay. Like, okay. So like, chain of events here is that it's okay. It's great crack to kill Nazis, but they're not just like some people in Germany 100 years ago. I'm one as well, apparently, or whatever. And so are people who are even way more moderate than me. And Devin Stack had a good point. It was kind of like this. He said, if they thought Charlie Kirk was too extreme and deserved to die, imagine what they think of you. That's the kind of disconcerting thing as well. If this was the left and not Israel or whatever. But it's like it is kind of scary that kind of far left were put to bed a little bit, or like became a bit redundant. But it's just weird to think that there's people out there who would laugh if, like, I know I'm not Charlie Kirk, I'm not a big deal or whatever, but in my own lane, there's people out there in Ireland, my own sort of nemesis plural. There are people out there who would think it would be gas if I did end up getting Charlie Kirked. There'd be plenty of these people who would either make sideways comments or full comments, like basically condoning it. And it's weird. I can't, I wouldn't quite be like that myself. Like, if someone has family and a life and all that, it's like, why would you want to kill them? Like, and it sounds very weak sauce to some of you. You want all the fire and brimstone, but to me, it's like, all I've ever said, and I've been consistent about this over the years, is that I just love to have conversations with these people. There's one or two times I've gotten a chance to speak to them, like once or twice in real life briefly, and once I went on a stream and we kind of talked and debated. I enjoyed it. I loved it. I thought it was great. I felt it's humanizing. It's like, okay, do you know what? We don't, like, we can hate each other's ideas, and we can feel like, there's a bit of a malevolent motivation behind, or the ideas, or you're just a resentful right winger, or you're just a bad left winger, or you can have a bit of that. But at the end of the day, he eats his breakfast and he's got a mam and he lives his life, and and I kind of respect the fact that he's into the ideas, he's into politics, and takes what's going on around us seriously, takes it to heart a little bit. I can respect maybe that common ground a little bit, and we can talk, and it's fun because it's like, yeah, let's talk about ideas, let's compare them, let's get into it. It's enlightening. You're kind of going, all I want is that, and all I want is harmony and people to do better and stuff like that, and it to be a nice world, a nice orderly coherent world. And there's people out there who would be happy to see you die, even though you've no NGO, you've no political, you're not some, I've no advantage or access or any of that at all. I'm just a normal person. Like, why would you? And that's me, let's say. But like with Charlie Kirk, it's in a way it's kind of similar. He has a different level, but he's a big figure and he's got institutional backing. And I would have thought, yeah, he's conning. Like, you know what I mean? He's kind of told what to say, or I wouldn't have been a huge fan. But at the end of the day, with him, I can't believe he's dead. It's weird. It's still strange. He's just one of those people online, that one of the things I'd respect him for is that he did do the whole prove me wrong or I'll debate you or whatever. He didn't do it with Nick Fuentes and all these other sort of dissident right people, fair enough. But in general, he went out in public and did his thing. I can respect that, So in a way, it is similar to the rest of us, where we're up for a bit of a conversation. Like, think of if there was a left, like realistically, even though he's cunning, how many left-wing figures, like mainstream figures, actively court right-wingers in a way that is somewhat respectful to say, hey, I want you to challenge me. I want to talk. I want to have these big public spectacle debates, and we'll talk and disagree with each other in some sort of civil way. Like, you have to hand that to Charlie Kirk, I think. Um, I don't see Hassan or who else. Who are these left wingers in America? I don't know. I don't even know who they are. But let's take a Owen Jones or someone like that, or some Irish equivalent. You don't see them actively going out of their way to court all sorts of right wing people at random, and not just institutional, but like random people in a college or here or there. That is in the spirit of positivity and of like enlightenment and decency and all that, in fairness. And now he's dead. So yeah, there was this demographic thing. It's kind of related to what I'm waffling about, what I'm hash browning away on here. It's what's it called? Future 40 Ireland. That's the latest term for their latest bullshit, right? So we had Ireland 2040, and it was Ireland 2040. We're going to bring in 10 million people, or sorry, no, the population is expected to increase by 10 gazillion or whatever. We believe we've consulted our crystal ball, and it seems to be the case. And it's got a shiny brochure or whatever. Anyway, the latest version of that for like news just in the next 20 years, 1 million people are expected to come here. Is, Ireland 2040 with a new lick of paint. It's now Ireland's 2065, and breaking news: millions of foreigners are coming here. That's basically it, right? And the same, it's so threadbare at this point. The same justification: we have an aging population, pensions to pay, and all of that. And so we need to build up our infrastructure, and this is why we're getting planning in place to build up our infrastructure and to basically prop up our pension and our healthcare system, all that stuff. And I feel like I've been debating with this from day one. Like, from the moment you start talking about immigration, it's not long before you get to that. Even back in 2015, this was the line. This was the party line. Once you get past all the touchy-feely nice stuff about, oh, we love everybody and diversity and equality and good restaurants and all that, the kind of serious final boss argument is like, well, whether you like it or not, even if you don't like all that stuff and you don't have a choice because we need it. This is the fundamental thing. And then you start picking your way through and you realize it's kind of not true. And here we are like 10 years later, and we're still just at it. The latest policy says we need to do this. Sorry. Now, one of my questions is like, we've solidly been doing that since 2015. You had the migrant crisis in 2016, basically fuck tons of immigrants coming to Europe, right? So that's when we all had our culture war and our discussion about it, as a reaction to lots and lots of immigration compared to what we'd previously seen. And the justification was pension bomb and standards of living and hospitals and blah, blah, blah. Sure, we need them to build houses. We can't have houses unless, like, not only is immigration not the cause of the housing crisis, it's the actual solution to it, right? And all of that. And they're beating that drum hard, even in, let's say, 2015. And my basic point, among others, would be, well, that was the story then. We've had 10 years of that, especially in the last 5 years. You've ramped it up to like absurd proportions. And now you're saying that's the plan, like more of that for 40 more years, escalated again. Well, in the last 10 years, it hasn't gone very well, has it? Like, we keep seeing it get raised that pensions are a bit insolvent. Okay, why have they brought in loads of migrants? What's the problem? They ought to be definitely grand now. The healthcare system is shocking, right? Sometimes they say Ireland ranks this and that on. A lot of that is just bullshit. If you have to wait weeks in many cases for a GP, years for surgery, doctors are like totally tapped out. It's like talking to a zombie, and the system just doesn't work at all. Half the country's on private insurance, which is like going up by like €100 every 2 hours, and the other half's on medical cards, and they're not very good either. I'd rather have one than not, but like, you know what I mean? And then then there's about 10% of the population who are on neither, and they're lost and rudderless as well. You know, the healthcare system is not good, right? And it's kind of getting worse. You try to go to, most people now would be afraid to try to go to a hospital or get sick or whatever. I don't know, was this propaganda or not, but I saw some video, TikTok, this isn't exactly sourced, of an American woman in Lebanon saying she'd been waiting like a year or two for surgery. This is very anecdotal. Waiting a year or two for some surgery, like minor enough surgery, but she needed it. Or her health insurance didn't cover it or some American shit like that. And she went to Lebanon and went to get it checked, and like she was booked in for surgery a couple of days later. And people were like, oh my God, that's amazing. That's crazy. And you kind of go, well, like, shouldn't that be kind of the standard? Like, I mean, you don't go in every day needing a minor surgery if you're the average person. It's only going to be once every 10 years you're befallen with some issue. You go, I've been paying tax the whole time. Like, you know, if you have a surgery to do on me, why don't you do it in the next 3 weeks instead of putting me on a thing for 2 years? And if you do mine in 3 weeks, then when the guy pops up in 2 years, some other guy with the same issue needs the same surgery. You can do his in 2 years and mine now. Like, he's going to get his issue in 2 years, and then he'll do his in 2 years. Like, it's, why do we have to have the year timeline, like 2 years delay? Like, why don't we just get it to be you do them as they come along and run a functional system, and it makes sense? Like, wouldn't that be standard? So, like, what I'm saying is the way it works is like not good, obviously. And housing, all the rest of it, like, basically everything is getting shittier. The energy situation is bad. That could be a whole other conversation. But like, you know, it's not working. The demographic miracle or whatever that you're talking about just doesn't, like, if there was, I know it doesn't work for lots of other reasons, but let's say I was missing the magic. I don't understand RTE and it actually does work. I just can't grasp it. Okay, well, is the timeline that we're just currently on not proof positive, proof negative? Obviously that doesn't work anyway. I don't think trying 4 more instances of it for 4 more decades should magically fix it. And then the obvious things, it's a Ponzi scheme. You know, you bring in a bunch of people to prop up pensions. So like your population is 4 million, then you increase it to fucking 6 million with a load of young people to pay the pensions of the old people. But the young people, migrants, then turn 70 and they need pensions. Well, who's going to pay theirs? So you need another 8 million people. Like, you know, like any Ponzi scheme, it doesn't work. It's not structurally sound. That does not make sense. And you just destroy your society and civilization in the meantime. So it's just, that's not Ponzi schemes are not a good policy for your fucking country. Then there's AI and robotics. Someone was telling me on Twitter earlier, their whole planning document has all this stuff about bringing in 5 billion Brazilians or whatever and Indians, but mentions robotics like once very briefly. Now that's a big deal. Robotics will be a big thing as the decades unfold. This is planning out to 2065. And AI, like all these people with tippy-tappy laptop jobs, like none of them are going to be needed. If you need a financial advisor to say like, oh, how should I plan for my saving for my house and do this and my investment? Or what social welfare can I access? All this different stuff. She can just go onto ChatGPT and just go bing, bong, bing, done. So, you know, any of that shit isn't needed already. It's just they haven't been sacked yet, or like, the hiring freeze is already underway for all that stuff. That'll go for a lot of high tech jobs as well, pharma, all sorts of stuff, you know. And then with robotics is a bit more futury, but eventually there'll be like that'll plug the gap with physical things as well. And you'll have AI, which 10 years time, like think of where AI is compared to a few years ago. In 10 years it'll be off the wall, and then you'll have physical manifestations like basically robots that can do things to match. And like, you know, you're not going to really need a lot of people to work, and there'll be a lot of surplus value. Ideally, you'd just capture that back off the capitalist fucking ruling class or whatever, like the billionaires and the rest of them. You'd figure out a way to like redistribute that so society can plow on or whatever. But certainly you don't need to pile fucking 3 million immigrants on top of that. Like, you know, that doesn't make sense. And then the other thing is China. They have not had any mass immigration. Their demographics have been in kind of a spiral, classic demographic decline for ages now. Their population is estimated to be less than what they say it is. They're having fuck all babies, and they haven't been having babies for a while. So it's well locked in, much like us, probably worse. And yet they built Shanghai Metro, and they're doing all these things, big high bridges and fancy trains and all the rest of it. And they're basically dealing with the demographic shortages and just figuring it out. You just basically adjust, you just adapt to, like a squishy toy or whatever. You just, I'm around kids too much here at home. Like that's my reference, but like, just like any pressure or whatever river flow, you just adapt to the kind of condition that you're faced with. You don't do what the West is doing. And sure, you might end up with a return to more intergenerational households, a bit of a stronger push for robotics, a change in the kind of culture, the kind of habits, ways of life, familial structures, all that stuff would kind of adjust a bit. It wouldn't be like unrecognizable. It would just be some, you go, oh, it's not really like it was 40 years ago. Things, we live a bit differently now. But it'd be grand. It doesn't have to be that big a deal. And probably the surplus of housing and the surplus of a lot of stuff would lead to a bit of stability for a lot of people, and it would sort of breathe, and probably the fertility rates would increase. The people who tend to want to have 4 kids or whatever, and the fact that they have a house and they're all good or whatever, they'd be freer to have their kids, and then their kids would have a stronger genetic and cultural predisposition to have kids as well. Probably there'd be like little subcultures, borderline little religious kind of, the culture would effectively have to change. You'd have to get away from like consumer liberalism, and that would happen just by default under the environmental pressures, and the whole thing would adjust, and just like any organism would just kind of go along. It's grand. China's doing that, and they're technologically off the wall, right? We're like getting to be second world compared to them. So China's proof positive, living proof of it. They're the A/B test. They have the same demographic issues we do. They're not doing immigration really at all, and they're doing better than we are. So I don't know. It's like AI and robotics. It's a Ponzi scheme, and China. Boom. Yeah, but you won't like hear that on RTE. They will speak about it. This is what I said on Twitter. Like it's just a big. For those of you who are watching on Twitter, I know I'm like streaming my Twitter to you now as you watch. It's a bit navel gazing, but yeah, this video. It's just you hear this like time and again, the inevitability, and also that it's like a weather forecast. Like we expect the population to go up 3 million in the next 20 years. You don't expect it. That's your policy. Like that's your policy, and that's how they hide the ball. They just kind of, one is they act very boring, so like it just washes over you, the gray man in a gray suit type of vibe. And the authority of I'm a boring person on the television, and they also just speak about it like it's a force of nature that they can't control or predict. Like they can kind of try to predict it, but it's just something that just happens, like the wind. And also, it's inevitable. Like it has to happen. Now, those are rhetorical tricks, that if you just kind of casually just like Darren Brown or something, like, oh, I'm talking to you and your wallet's in my pocket now, or whatever. You didn't even know. You just handed it to me. It's like that type of thing on the mind. But it's like, if you actually unpack it all, you're going, what you're saying is your policy is to very intentionally, very specifically bring in millions of people, even though it makes no sense and it's fucking everything up. That's the truth. But how they put it is more like this.
Now, new data from the Department of Finance shows that Ireland's population could grow much faster than previously expected.
It could grow much faster than previously expected. Wow. Fucking hell. How did that happen? That's mad. The wind shifted, or it's increasing now. There's more gales coming from the west. What the fuck are you talking about? It's policy. Not only do you bring them in as your like cheap surf labor, I don't know what you call it, like shifting value from labor to capital, all that stuff. But like, not only do you bring these people in, but you subsidize them. The asylum system, HAP, fluid, all this shit. Like it's a transfer from existing taxpayers over to this new class of people. It's the most like rapacious system ever, and it's very, very, very targeted. They put all these structures in place. They advertise in India. All this, like, there's absolutely nothing about it that isn't highly engineered intentionally by the state. But as she says it here,
The Department of Finance shows that Ireland's population could grow much faster than previously expected. In a high growth scenario, we could have 7.59 million people living here by 2065. Let's talk to our Economics and Public Affairs editor David Murphy, who's been taking a look at these figures. What are these two scenarios, David, and what are the implications of our population growing like this?
Well, what the Department of Finance has done is that there's been a concern about Ireland's previous forecasts for the population because generally they've been far too low. That's resulted in big problems like the housing situation we have now. The department has done three scenarios. One, a high growth scenario of 7.6 million people, a central scenario of 6.7 million people, and a low growth scenario of 6 million people. At the same time, the population is going to be getting a lot older. So a lot of the growth in the population is going to come from immigration. The question now is, with an older population, where's the money going to come from for the pensions, for the healthcare and the social services, and also where's the infrastructure going to come from for the higher population we're going to.
Like, all of this is unexamined assumptions. Like, one, sorry boomers who are watching, I know I'm always dogging on you, but like, you know, some boomers are freezing in their homes and all this, sure, but I'm talking broadly speaking, you know, the classic tropes about boomers are generally true. They're grand. They've got loads of money. They've all their assets owned, their house done up, they're this, they're that, the other. And they're like, it's a bit of a cliche to say they're all off on cruises. Maybe they're not all quite doing that, but it's not far off. Going on wine trips to France, to this, that, and the other. They're like, for the most part, they're pretty grand. And you very often hear about some of them say, I'm on this pension, that pension, the other pension. And they've got more money than they know what to do with. That's not all of them, but a lot of them have that. So the idea that, like, look, millennials and Zoomers especially, to say that they've had to tighten their belt versus what they expected. They expected a decent life and all this, and now they're looking at being homeless and starving effectively, right? So if you can do it to them, you know, you can also say, hey, maybe boomers will have to, like you said, a baseline so that nobody's too badly off or whatever. But maybe instead of like, if millennials and Zoomers have to live with their boomer parents, maybe in some occasions the boomer parent has to live with the millennial and they have to put up with each other and this, that, and the other. These things would be possible in certain contexts. You know, what was he on about? He said the healthcare and all this kind of stuff. Like, again, robotics, AI, this, that, and the other. Like I say, you just kind of roll with it. At the end of the day, there are like negative externalities to anything. So if you tighten up on immigration, you would have some like problems that arise, and you just deal with them as they arise. You could have a very in-depth conversation. There's loads of studies out there, like peer-reviewed, full-on meta studies and all that show that the demographic expansion model, like replacement migration and all that, doesn't actually do anything with the macroeconomy. It really doesn't solve the problem. I'm not going to get into the weeds on it all now. I don't have it in front of me, but there's plenty of that out there. Suffice to say, this guy is just hashing off these things like they're inevitabilities, like there's no alternative, like each little word out of his mouth isn't a sort of unchallenged or unexamined assumption and just assertion. You know, it's mad. It each piece of logic he builds on the last bit, and it's like, well, we could go back like 10 of the last things you've just kind of spat out, and all of them are like challengeable, you know. So but of course, how it works is that, well, there's no conversation, is there? There's nobody in the room with you. There's nobody in the room with Pascal Donoghue or any of them. They just say our population is going to do this, and the population is that, and the elder and the macroeconomy and GDP growth to support our health service. You go, that's all great. That's a great story you have there. But like, I mean, you know, there's about 10 different counter theories we could be having. Well, we could be having a discussion about this, you know, but no, of course not.
Future years. And that's why these reports are being produced today.
All right, David Murphy, thank you.
Like, that's the thing. It's like therein lies the question. Same with energy. I want to talk about energy some other night, but you know, we're going to have green energy or wind energy by 2030, and we're going to go all in on offshore wind, which is fine. But it's like, one, you're not even doing that. Your own claims that you were going to have for that you're like way behind on those. So that's not happening. The grid is sort of doesn't work. And the question you would want to beg is, do we nationalize some of the Barry Rose and some of these? Do we do more exploration or facilitate it? And to what extent do we kind of nationalize it? Do we do a Norway model? Do we do this? Do we do that? Do you go full Iran, Venezuela? I don't know. You know, and someone could dispute those, and you could dispute back and forth. Oh yeah, you could have a big conversation about that. Then you could talk about nuclear, the SMR, small modular reactors, and someone could say, well, you know, I don't think that's a good idea. I think it's a good idea, and all sorts of stuff. And like, you could have a discussion about it, but there's just no discussion. There's no discussion about something as fundamental as like energy policy, with the most expensive energy in the world, after Bermuda, apparently. And you know, these are conversations you could be having. Like, I think these are important matters. The demographic situation. Oh, by the way, we're just going to bring in 3 million people. You go, should we, like, where's the conversation though? Like, I mean, I missed the bit where we had the conversation about it, like where some person thinks it's a good idea, another person thinks it's a bad idea. One person thinks it's a force of nature, inevitability. The other person stresses that it's a policy. And then you talk about the consequences for healthcare and aging, and well, you know, we skip that part, like where we're talking about it, right? And it's just like over to the small matter of just bringing in several million people to your country. You know, you're not talking about that. We're not talking about the energy plan. Like, talking involves that there's other sides to it. People fundamentally disagree on it. You just don't have that. It's fucking bullshit. And even Pascal Donoghue, and they tweeted it out and they put it on, like, you couldn't reply to it. You couldn't reply to the bloody tweet. You know, you can't even do that. So we just sit there watching these like dry ballses talking and making claims and putting down these maxims and setting up these policies, and we're all just like, okay, you know, we just have to kind of go along for the ride. But anyway, I said I'd leave it at about 12 o'clock, so I will leave it there. Oh, it's just a bleeding fucking disgrace. Everything. Yeah, so those people, you know, those people getting killed was bad. Charlie Kirk, I mean, the girl on the train is shocking, and it's just really sad and alienating. But Charlie Kirk, I just didn't have that on the cards at all tonight, right? You know what I mean? It's like it's a movie. It feels like that. These kind of online e-celebs now are just getting whacked in front of us. Like, it's a strange bridge to cross. And needless to say, rest in peace to him and commiserations to his family. I'm not some sort of ambassador or diplomat, so I don't know. I feel like it's right to, I don't know him, but you know, obviously. But yeah, that's the kind of, that is a threshold or a Rubicon crossed in a way, isn't it? Because ultimately he's kind of like an e-celeb in a sense. And he just got like slaughtered in front of everybody. So that's kind of where we're at now. I think that's something I failed to mention a while ago. That is a distinct, surreal aspect of it. It is mental. Yeah, I agree. Ricky Bobby 420. That's weird. It's just weird. I don't know what else to say about it. All those other e-celebs, big figures in America, you know, better be careful. Maybe outside of America too. It's weird. And again, I'm not Charlie Kirk. I'm a long way from Charlie Kirk. I'm Irish. I've got some small amount of followers on Twitter and all that, whatever. But just, if that's the state of the game, and you're in any way involved in it, or even if you're a non, but you feel invested in this whole journey we're all on, some sort of destiny we can kind of see with through one eye shut, kind of thing. We know it's building. And like I say, I have kept saying, we know it's building towards something here. We don't quite know where we're going, but we know we're in the, you know, we're in the car and it's headed somewhere. And just, I'm not afraid of getting assassinated, let's say. I don't think it's very assassinated as well as only for famous people, but like, it's one of those things First off, highly unlikely. But if it did happen, it happens. And it's also part of being out there, in kind of, what's the word? Consternated, political, is consternated a word, in that milieu. But it's weird that that's just kind of on the cards now in general as a thing for big figures, small figures. I don't know. Like, it would make a lot of people want to say, okay, I think I'll just disappear into the woods and just let this whole nightmare play itself out. But, you can't do that. And so we're in this ugly nightmare. Whether it's you walk out the door and you go down the street and you've seen a lot of stuff, or whether you're some sort of online person and now everyone's getting assassinated or whatever it is, it's just like, okay, can it just be 1998? Can we just go for a spin? Can we just can things just be relatively okay? Apparently not. So anyway, that's where we are. That's life. So a couple of super chats there. Finola, always a regular. Thank you. 5 says, I'm very tired, so I just want to send Gerald a cup of tea in case I'm not off. Thanks, Finola. Appreciate it. Shina 10. Worst case, capitalism outside of China collapses as society disintegrates. Okay, you've got me. I'm interested. Worst case, capitalism outside of China collapses as society disintegrates once foreigners hit a critical mass. The hope is that even if foreigners are a majority, they aren't exactly a united bloc. Yeah, capitalism outside of China collapsing. I just like the collapse thing. It's just that's the thing. We can taste a collapse in the air or something, but we don't kind of know what collapse is. What does how does it play out? No one can know. We just don't know, and it's like, okay, so we just have to basically will on a collapse, but obviously collapse is bad. But there's no hope of just saying, how about we don't collapse and we just make it good. But we wouldn't know how to get there. That's the end goal eventually. Or we collapse and then we make it good or whatever. But it'd be great if we could just make it good, starting right now. That's the idealist in me. Wouldn't that be lovely? Just a bunch of people who have the right intentions, with good technical advice, trying to run the country across the board, energy, social issues, all these kind of things, healthcare, housing, infrastructure, all that. Do it well and do it future-proofed. Try and lock in the next 50 to 100 years nicely, reintegrate kind of rites of passage and social order, stuff like that, and get a bit of harmony, a bit of beauty back into our society and our lives a little bit, starting just now. Would it be that? Why is that such a crazy thing? But instead we have to, and I take your point, we have to wait for capitalism to collapse and people's a race war and this, that, and the other, all this kind of stuff, in order to vaguely get to some other side. What a fucking nightmare. So yeah, China, it would just be good to be Chinese right now, I'd say, versus being a Western, a round eye. Imperator Scotorum, thank you. 12 says, we need young, intelligent nationalists to network with each other and to focus on becoming as rich, as influential, and as powerful as possible. Well, I do recognize that as the Nick Fuentes sort of prescription. Don't disagree with that at all. It is and I look at all these, I look at someone like Michael McCarthy, and I see, let's say Kurt Kaz, right, who's doing his bringing his adventure tourism back to Europe, and he's basically James Bond, right? He's going around the place Lotharioing, having the crack, going into dangerous neighborhoods, all flash and cool and all this. And now he's turned fully based. You could see someone like him being just a unifying figure for the West in a way. These young figures. To mention again, Nick Fuentes, right? And then I look at Kurt Karst, and he follows 100 people or not that many people. And I see one of the people he follows is Michael McCarthy, and he's sharing Michael's videos. And Michael McCarthy himself is high human capital, clearly. Keith, all these other figures, like there's more and more, some of the best people we have, in the country are gravitating towards like a version of sort of nationalism, right wing, whatever you call this, we have going on. I love the hybridization too, adopting some, like, it's not cartoon right wing boomer or whatever. It's like a hybrid thing. It's for its time. It's not this kind of Zionist thing. Building up a lot of people with that human capital, just like you say, networking away. As this kind of collapse happens, and as there's this dysfunction, and when the left doesn't have answers, and when the fake right doesn't have answers, and everyone is so sick of it all, the only thing that's left standing are the high quality people who do have the answers, who are, work hard, consistent, all that kind of stuff, and they make great content and they develop their ideas. And they're, ultimately the thing is they're just kind of cool as well. They just come across well and all of that. It's hard to beat that as a, like, hey, if we're doing anything, that's kind of it. And that is happening. So it is a good omen. It's a good omen. A good thing. Mackie in Chains 2 says, we're just being Morgenthaued. That's the tweet. Yeah, I agree. I suppose, yeah, that's a big theory as well. Just that it's basically just like wiping out the population and replacing us and turning us into, like, I have this big thing about like Indianifying the country. You really can see that because I was watching Giant Bandari and all, like getting scathing on India because of the last few weeks in Ireland with Indians. But then it just dawned on me with this like ruthless capital exploitation, like just these rich entities or whatever, and then you have this debt groveling mass. You can see it happening year on year in Ireland, like, the reduction of living standards and all of that, the decay of the society, the 4-person mortgages, the scams, the baby pepper-ready and human trafficking people effectively in, allegedly, some other person might say, not me or whatever. But, and he's like a Fine Gael, integrating with the Fine Gael. It's like the domestic elite in the West, like the local ones, Fine Gaels and all that. And basically the scammers on our side are sort of fusing themselves with third worldist levels of exploitation, so you basically just force everyone into a hut and like grape them as for their lifeblood, and just low trust scams, people piled up on top of each other in houses. It's kind of a pseudo, it's like, yeah, that is the default of humanity in a certain sense. It's just that unbridled looting of society, just stripping it down for parts and turning people into slaves effectively, hordes and masses or whatever, and then just a bunch of like gaudy, wealthy elite or whatever. It is a huge Indianification happening. That's how I kind of see it. It's almost like, okay, they're literally doing that by bringing in tons of Indians. It's sort of obvious when you think about it, isn't it? Like, oh yeah. So if I rule over Irish people, they have all this kind of expectation and social order and trust, and they're not scamming each other. I've seen Indians are scamming each other constantly in Ireland. The Indian embassy was like put out a bulletin to its people being like, beware of scam callers pretending to be us, right? Stuff like that. The baby Pepperadian or whatever his name is like bringing him and his company are bringing in Indian nurses to funnel into the hospitals to basically Indianify the hospital kind of worker employee situation, cheapify it, downgrade it, basically race to the bottom. And even at that, he's actually allegedly kind of scamming them as well. it's like, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, Irish people, like I say, if they find a wallet full of money, they're like, oh, let me spend 2 hours of my day trying to find this person so I can give them back their wad of €500. You know, that's an inherent thing. That's what makes the West valuable. But it's also high maintenance from a exploiter or ruling class perspective. It'd be much easier if they were all if it was just like Calcutta, you know what I mean? Just absolutely abuse the shit out of them. Let's all scam each other, and it'll just be this every man for himself. You know, I've heard it said that India is a nation of 1.4 billion castes, you know. So instead of having that kind of social trust, harmony, togetherness, you end up with this brutal, exploitative, every man for himself, Mad Max sort of hellscape, which is what a lot of India is basically. I think they're trying to downgrade the West to that basically. And if you want to test that theory, you just like measure now versus a year's time, and it'll have gone solidly in that direction. So yeah, I agree. Anyway, thank you all for super chats. Apologies for it going on. I just wanted to come live and chat. It's trite. I don't know him. I don't want to do the whole ambassadorial, I'm not the priest or whatever, but it is very sad as well. The thing that gets me is that he's 2 young kids and they're not going to get to say goodnight to their dad. That's tough going. All because of talking about politics and stuff like that. Pity. But anyway, on that lovely, uplifting note, I just don't want to depress you guys too much, but it is what it is, what I came on to talk about. Thank you for watching. I'll try to be back again sooner rather than later. Take care of yourselves. Good night. Ihoa.